All right, and here we are doing our next step. I still have Miss Robbins here as my helper, being my other hand. As I've told you repeatedly during this project, it's always nice to have an extra hand. Now, this particular video, we're going to talk about how to construct the parachute and put the shroud lines on there. And in this assignment, there's also a link to a parachute size calculator. So to calculate the size of the parachute, we're going to estimate the uh, max weight of our rocket to be 65 grams. And we're using that measurement because our constraints say that it can't be any more than 650 milligrams or 65 grams. And so we're going to use that. We're very likely over engineering our parachute. It could probably be smaller, but we're going to go with the maximum allowable for the size of our particular rocket. And so as a result, we got 44 centimeters of diameter, which means I'm actually going to draw this with 22 centimeters of a radius. So the easiest way to get a nice round circular parachute is to take a Sharpie or a marker that will write on your plastic tablecloth and cut a piece of string to the size of the radius, which is maybe half the diameter, and then have somebody hold the center of the string down and then use the string as a
compass.
Like as a compass. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, to draw the circle. So it'll ensure that you have, as near to a circle as you can possibly get. Now, parachutes are not all circles. So if you decide you don't want a circle for a parachute, by all means, make it into, something more oval or oblong. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out this circle that we've drawn, or circle-ish shape that we've drawn. So, Miss Robbins, what did you do with the scissors?
I don't think I moved them.
Here's these
Puppies.
Oh, here. So we're just gonna, and you should have more than enough plastic to make a parachute. So if you want to try something fancy like doing 2 parachutes or something like that, feel free to go with it. It was just a lot easier for me to throw in a whole tablecloth into your kit than try to cut little pieces for you when I made the kit. So you can see Miss Robbins is carefully cutting around the edge of that plastic to make a nice little circle. Now remember that our diameter is 44 centimeters, or our radius is 22. So we'll want to know that number when we start cutting our shroud lines. You want the shroud lines to be long enough that they allow the parachute to fully open, but you don't want them to be so long that they get easily twisted and knotted up. So a good rule of thumb is to make your shroud lines a little bit longer than your diameter, and that way you have some room to for knots at the end. But essentially what we're going to do is we're now going to fold this circle so that we have 6 or 8 parts. I choose to usually do 8, so that I've got 4 shroud lines, but you can fold it in thirds and use 6 shroud lines. And then you should have some of these little plastic or paper
punch hole reinforcers.
Yeah, reinforcers. There you go. And what you're going to want to do is on each one of these little fold marks, you're going to want to kind of crease it down so that you can really see where those little places where they fold are. You're going to want to go on the inside and the outside of those fold marks with those reinforcers. And what that will do is that'll help keep from ripping through the plastic when you're punching holes to tie your shroud lines. Now, some people like to get all fancy and actually use hole punches for this, but my experience has been when you try to use a hole punch, it is going to rip. So I tend to just use something pointy and sharp like a pin, and then it will usually expand a little bit as you tie the knots and stays within the little reinforced holes. So you're going to want to do this for each one of those 8 spots where you're going to have a shroud line. Kind of lost it over here. I need to flip it over to do those last 3. Sorry about that little interruption. UPS guy coming to the door. Anyway, so we've now reinforced each of the spots on both sides of the plastic where we're going to be doing our shroud lines. And we're going to be cutting, because I'm going to have 8 places where they tie off. So we're going to be cutting 4 shroud lines. So each shroud line is going to be tied from one hole to the next hole. And we want them to be just a little bit longer than our diameter, so we have some room to tie them off. So we're looking at our diameter was 44 and we're cutting them about 50 centimeters. You can always go back and trim them if you've got excess hanging out the back of the where you've tied them, but that as a rule of thumb usually works. Now you want to take something kind of pointy that you can poke a little hole in between the little paper reinforcers, and then you're gonna tie a knot with the shroud line, and it can just be, you know, a square knot. Oh, and I don't have the fingers to be able to do that right now. That's 2
my
fingers.
job,
That's 2 hands for sure. So just tie a simple square knot.
Am I tying a simple square knot?
Yep, tie a simple square knot and then go back through again. And so as you see, we've got this shroud line connected to this hole. Now we're going to tie it to the very next hole on the parachute. And what this will do is it will help to make sure that your shroud lines don't get tangled and knotted up by keeping them not too long and also keeping them so that they don't have open edges. They're going to be loops to the parachute. And so you're going to want to do this between each of the pairs of your the places that you marked your holes. So if you're doing 6, you're going to do it 3 times. If you're doing 8, you're going to do it 4 times. If you want to do more and you want to go for, 10 holes and 5 shroud lines, obviously the more shroud lines you add, the less likely the parachute is to get or the more likely the parachute is to get tangled and not open up completely. But also if you don't have enough shroud lines, then it doesn't open into a nice round surface that causes enough drag. So you've got to kind of have a little balance between the number of holes to keep it geometrically stable and not too many holes that then get all tangled up and keep it from opening. So as you can see, Miss Robbins is doing an awesome job. We now have 2 of our shroud lines done here. And so I will show you in the next video how we are going to take those shroud lines and then combine them with shock cord and actually attach it to our body tubes. That step you don't want to do until after your coupler is dry and make sure that it's really stable and that you're not going to make any more adjustments to it because you're going to need to be able to put the parachute inside there. And once the parachute gets kind of glued and stuck to things like that, it often makes you have to start over again. And that can be very frustrating. So make sure that your coupler is all done before you go on to the next step. And let's thank Miss Robbins again for stopping by and helping me make my videos today.
No problem.